Hello, Scorpio. Let's take a breath before we begin. You've been through something recently, haven't you? Maybe it wasn't loud or dramatic. Maybe it ended in silence. Or maybe it didn't even feel like a clear ending, just a slow unraveling of something you once held tightly. There was a moment, or perhaps a series of moments, where you thought, that's it. This is done. It's over. You might have even told yourself it's time to move on. Even if your heart hadn't fully caught up with that decision. And yet here you are, still carrying echoes of something that refused to close as cleanly as you wanted. Because the truth is, Scorpio, it's not over. Not in the way you thought. This isn't a return to the past. It's not about going back to who you were before the breaking point. It's about recognizing that the pain, the pause, and even the perceived ending were not there to stop you, they were there to open something. Something deeper. Something that couldn't exist in the shape your life used to take. You see, Scorpio, you are not being punished. You are being redirected. That heavy sense of finality you felt was not death, it was gestation. A new cycle has been incubating. One that couldn't begin until you allowed something to fall apart. And yes, it did fall apart. Maybe it was a relationship you poured too much of yourself into. Maybe it was a job that slowly drained you. Maybe it was a version of you that you had outgrown, but didn't know how to release. Whatever it was, it reached its expiration point. And you felt it, even if you didn't want to admit it. And now, in the quiet that follows that unraveling, you're standing at a strange threshold. Things look the same on the outside. But inside, everything has shifted. You're more tired, but also more honest, more cautious, but also more awake. What makes this moment so powerful isn't what you lost. It's what you're about to gain because of it. That's the piece no one talks about, the sacred silence after endings, where you're not yet who you'll become. But you've already outgrown who you were. You thought it was over. But what if this was the shedding of an identity that was too small for the soul you're growing into? What if what broke was never meant to stay, and its absence is the first step toward a life more aligned with your truth? You've been under spiritual construction, Scorpio, and not by accident. There have been things you've prayed for in the past. Growth, clarity, strength, peace, and those things are not delivered in a neat little package. They come disguised as the very moments that undo us. You wanted transformation, then the universe had to burn what no longer fit. And you may not see it fully now. But one day soon, you'll look back and whisper, thank God that ended. Because it had to. Because if it didn't, you would have stayed. And staying would have cost you the parts of yourself you're finally beginning to reclaim. You see, Scorpio, endings are rarely real in the way we imagine them. They're not always abrupt doors, slamming shut. Sometimes, they're soft, dissolves people pulling away, energy shifting, conversations, changing, tone, spaces no longer feeling like home. You felt all of that. And now you're in the space between, no longer tethered to the old, not yet anchored in the new. It's disorienting. Yes, but it's also sacred. Because in this space, you get to choose again. And this time, you choose from a place of experience, not illusion. This isn't the time to chase closure. This is the time to embrace clarity. You don't need a final word or a perfect explanation from the person or situation that unraveled. What you need is what you've already started building: self-respect. Boundaries. A new voice that no longer begs to be heard, but simply speaks its truth. This is your rebirth, not in flames. Not in drama, but in quiet conviction. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're just becoming. And here's something else you may not have realized: the story isn't just about you. Your absence from certain people's lives. Your silence. Your shift. It's becoming their wake-up call. Someone is only now beginning to understand the weight of your presence. But they had to lose access to feel the void. Someone who once took your energy for granted is starting to wonder why everything feels different now. But Scorpio, that's not your burden to carry anymore. Your healing is not dependent on their realization. It's just a confirmation that you were never the problem, you were the mirror. So if things feel like they're circling back, don't panic. This isn't repetition. It's reflection. If a person reappears, or an opportunity resurfaces, ask yourself, does this support who I am now? Or who I used to be? You no longer have to settle for half presence, almost love, or temporary validation. You are entering a chapter that demands realness, depth, reciprocity. Nothing less will feel tolerable anymore. You thought it was over, but it was just the beginning of your return to self. This next part isn't about revenge or proving your worth. It's about remembering it and walking like you finally believe it. Because you didn't come this far just to crumble at the door of transformation. You came this far to cross it. And what's waiting on the other side is where we'll go next. Scorpio, something about your energy right now feels quieter, but it isn't weakness. It's intention. It's the kind of silence that comes when a soul is busy realigning itself beneath the surface. You're not broadcasting every emotion, every revelation, every shift. You've grown out of that. You've realized that some parts of your transformation are too sacred to share with just anyone. And that's not isolation, that's maturity. You've stopped looking for people to understand you and started focusing on understanding yourself. Because in truth, Scorpio, alignment isn't loud. It doesn't come wrapped in applause or obvious signs. It comes when your actions stop betraying your intuition, when your boundaries start holding, when you finally stop trying to prove that you're good enough and begin treating yourself like you already are. That's where you are now. And it's powerful. There's something about you that's beginning to walk differently through the world. You're not rushing to explain yourself. You're not over-explaining your feelings. You're not clinging to what's slipping away. Instead, you're listening. You're noticing. You're letting things show you their true form without trying to reshape them into what you wish they could be. That's the gift of this quiet realignment, the ability to see clearly. Without delusion. And without desperation. It might feel unfamiliar at times. Like you've become emotionally unrecognizable to your past self. Maybe you even find yourself wondering if you've become cold or distant. But you haven't. What you've become is contained. And for someone who's given too much for too long, that containment is healing. You're not numb, you're just no longer bleeding for people who only showed up to take. This is what real self-respect feels like. Not the performative kind, but the private, everyday kind, the kind where you don't respond to energy that makes your spirit contract. The kind where you walk away from dynamics that confuse your nervous system, the kind where you stop fighting to be seen and start choosing environments where your presence is felt even in your stillness. And Scorpio, your stillness has never been more alive than it is right now. You're in the process of rewriting the contract you once signed with suffering. You no longer believe that pain is the price of love. You no longer equate chaos with passion. You no longer see your ability to endure as the proof of your worth. That's the real rebirth. Not in fire. Not in explosion. But in the slow, deliberate dismantling of every outdated belief that once kept you trapped in survival mode. There's a new version of you emerging. And they don't operate from fear. They don't chase closure. They don't beg for validation. They walk with a kind of soft certainty, the kind that says, if it costs my peace, it's too expensive. And yes, this version of you may make others uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your self-abandonment. But that's not your concern anymore. You are not here to shrink for anyone. You are here to expand, and sometimes that expansion requires distance. Let yourself be different now. Let yourself be unrecognizable to the people who only knew the version of you that was tired, agreeable, and self-sacrificing. Let yourself evolve without guilt. Let the silence be your sanctuary instead of your punishment. This is not a phase, it's a shift in frequency. And not everyone will come with you. That's not cruelty. That's calibration. You're not shutting down. Scorpio. You're shutting out the noise so you can finally hear your own guidance. And what it's telling you now is clear. This is your time. Your time to build, not chase. To attract, not beg. To rest, not prove. To choose you, even when it's unfamiliar. Especially when it's unfamiliar. Because this alignment you're stepping into, it's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the version of you who was never afraid to be whole. And Scorpio, that version of you has been waiting patiently beneath all the noise, all the pain, and all the pretending. They're here now, and they're ready. Scorpio, it's strange how sometimes the softest miracles arrive right after everything falls apart. You wouldn't think that something so beautiful could grow out of such devastation, but here you are still standing, and still breathing, and beginning to notice something different in the air. It's subtle at first. Not a fireworks moment. Not some grand divine intervention. But more like a quiet lifting. Like the pressure in your chest has lessened. Like the fear that used to hum in the background is finally quiet. This is the part where the sky clears, not because everything has gone back to the way it was, but because you no longer want it to. That's the rainbow. Scorpio, not just a symbol of hope, but a confirmation that you didn't break. You bent. That you didn't get lost. You shed. That you didn't fail. You were freed. And even if you still feel the soreness in your emotional muscles, the storm did its job. It washed away what wasn't rooted. It revealed what was never truly yours to carry. And now, in the wake of that storm, something sacred is blooming. You may be noticing small confirmations. Maybe it's a clearer mind. A new connection that feels right without needing to be forced. Or just the fact that you're sleeping better. Worrying less. Saying no without guilt. These might not look dramatic to the outside world. But to you, they are signs of a revolution. You're no longer living in emotional survival mode. You're not waiting for the next heartbreak to come crashing in. You're not walking on eggshells or holding your breath. You are, perhaps for the first time in a long while, settling into yourself. There's a softness returning to you, not because you're naive again, but because you've made peace with your scars. You don't need to be guarded in every direction. You don't need to test every room for danger. You know how to leave when energy feels off. You know how to rest before you're burnt out. You know how to trust yourself. That's the rainbow. 2. It's not just something you witness. It's something you become. After the collapse, you don't return to the old shape. You form something new. Something wiser. Something more whole. And let's be honest, Scorpio, this didn't come easy. There were moments you almost turned back. Moments when you questioned if you were the problem. Moments when the loneliness felt unbearable. When the silence after letting go felt like it would swallow you. But you stayed. You kept breathing. You didn't run back to what broke you just because it was familiar. And that choice, the quiet courage of staying the course, opened the sky. Now, you're being shown things from a higher view. The patterns are clearer. The dynamics that once confused you now look obvious. The apologies you used to crave now feel unnecessary. Because the truth is, you no longer need someone to say they were wrong, for you to know you were right to walk away. The clarity is its own closure. The peace you feel now is its own reward. Don't be surprised if things start to flow again. Ideas, opportunities, connections. This is what happens when your energy isn't entangled in what doesn't nourish you. This is what happens when your boundaries hold. You're no longer leaking your power into situations that leave you empty. And as that energy returns to you, so does your magnetism. So does your glow. So does your ability to build a life that reflects your internal worth, not your past wounds. There's something sacred about how quietly it all changes. No big announcement. No need to prove anything. Just your spirit. Realigned. Your nervous system. Calmer. Your choices. Cleaner. Your life. Beginning to mirror the healing you've done in private. And that's why the rainbow matters, not because it fixes everything, but because it reminds you that the light is still yours. It never left. It just needed the storm to clear the way. So if you're wondering why you feel lighter, why you're not reacting the same way, why certain things don't sting like they used to, know this: it's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's the result of everything you walked through with grace, even when no one was watching. It's the blessing that blooms after the boundaries are set, the old ties are cut, and the soul is reclaimed. You thought the collapse would destroy you, but what it actually did was reveal you. And now that the storm has passed, what's rising in its place is not a version of you that simply survived, but one who's ready to live. Scorpio. Let's talk about them. The people who slipped out of your life quietly or left a mess behind. The ones who made promises they never kept. Who touched your heart and disappeared before you could understand why. The ones you argued with in your head long after they were gone. Not because you needed revenge, but because something in the story still felt unfinished. We often tell ourselves we've moved on, that we're fine, that we've let go, and maybe we have, to an extent. But Scorpio, you feel energy deeper than most. You hold echoes in your bones. Even when you've stopped speaking to someone, their name still floats through your memory on random days. You wonder if they think of you. You wonder if they ever understood. You wonder if they finally learned what love was after losing yours. And maybe you're not looking for them to return. Maybe you don't even want a conversation. But part of you still craves the closure that never came. The kind that doesn't need to be loud. The kind that just confirms I mattered to you, even if you couldn't say it back then. Because Scorpio, when you love, you do it with intensity, with presence, with everything. And to have someone walk away from that without explanation can leave you suspended in a question that echoes for years. But here's what you need to hear today. The story didn't end because you weren't enough. It ended because they weren't ready. Or because the chapter had served its purpose. Or because the version of you that showed up in that connection had already begun to outgrow the dynamic. And maybe the words were never spoken. Maybe the apology never arrived. Maybe the truth was never shared. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. And it doesn't mean you didn't leave a mark. You see, Scorpio, your energy lingers. Not in a haunting way, but in a soul-stirring way. The kind people try to replace but can't. The kind they replay in their minds when they hear a certain song or walk past a place you once stood together. And often, it's only after your absence becomes permanent that they begin to understand the depth of your presence. Some of them are thinking about you now, not just casually, but deeply, regretfully. Not because they want to drag you back into old cycles, but because they're starting to realize who you were to them, what you represented, how your love challenged them to be more honest, how your standards made them confront their shadows, and how, in the end, they weren't brave enough to rise to meet you where you were. But don't mistake their awakening for your responsibility. You are not required to revisit broken bridges just because someone finally learned how to swim. You are not a rehab center for those who only remember your value after destroying it. Growth can happen in separate directions. And not every soul that misses you is meant to return. Still, it's okay to feel it, to remember them, to wonder, because healing doesn't always look like forgetting. Sometimes it looks like forgiving someone who never said sorry. Sometimes it looks like acknowledging what was real, even if it wasn't healthy. Sometimes it looks like writing the ending yourself. Not to get revenge, but to give yourself peace. This is your permission, Scorpio, to release the weight of unfinished conversations, to no longer wait for the text, the call, the confession, because what you truly needed wasn't closure, it was clarity. And clarity doesn't come from others. It comes from within. It comes from the moment you realize that your worth was never tied to someone else's ability to hold it. And let this be your reminder. If someone had to lose you to value you, that's not your loss. That's your lesson. If someone couldn't love you without conditions, it wasn't your fault, it was their limit. If someone left without explanation, that silence spoke more truth than any excuse ever could. You loved with depth. You showed up. You gave what you had. And if that was too much for someone unready, that's on them. Not on you. Now, you don't need to chase justice in old stories. Because your alignment is the proof. Your peace is the closure. Your future is the final chapter. Let them wonder. Let them remember. Let them carry the lesson of you. You're not where they left you anymore. Scorpio. Something in the atmosphere has changed. You can't fully explain it, but you can feel it. The things that used to weigh you down don't hit the same anymore. The triggers that once pulled you into spirals now feel dull and distant. Your body knows it before your mind does. This is the beginning of a shift. Not one born from chaos this time, but from clarity, quiet, steady, irreversible clarity. You may have thought the hardest part was the collapse. But the real turning point is what happens after the way you start making different choices without even trying. The way you start walking away from things you once chased. The way you notice how much energy you used to spend just trying to be okay in places that were never meant to hold you. That's when you know the shift is real, when it stops being a fight and starts becoming instinct. This is the part of your journey where the soul starts to lead. The survival patterns are still there, but they're quieter now. They no longer sit in the driver's seat. You've outgrown the version of you that made herself smaller just to be tolerated. You've stopped explaining your worth to people who only ever heard what they wanted to. You've stopped needing to prove that you're lovable, valuable, whole. And now, from that place of stillness, everything is beginning again, but this time on your terms. You're not starting over from scratch. You're starting over from wisdom, from depth, from self-respect. That means things are going to look different. You'll say no faster. You'll leave earlier. You'll recognize red flags without painting them gold. You'll choose peace even when chaos tries to seduce you back into old roles. This isn't just a new chapter. This is a new lens, a new vibration, and the people, places, and opportunities that now align with you, they'll feel different too. You're going to notice things flow more easily, not because life suddenly got easier, but because your resistance isn't in the way anymore. You're not trying to force puzzle pieces to fit. You're not running into closed doors, hoping they'll open just because you care enough. You're letting life show you what wants to stay. You're watching who shows up when you're no longer the one reaching out first. And in that stillness, real answers emerge. This is where the magic begins, not because you chased it, but because you became still enough to receive it. And it's not the kind of magic that needs an audience. It's the kind that happens quietly when no one's watching. The moment you look in the mirror and realize you no longer carry the weight of proving yourself, the moment you respond to a situation differently than you ever have before, the moment you realize peace feels better than being right. That's the shift. And it's already begun. Don't expect everyone to understand this new frequency you're moving in. Some people will still try to pull you into old dynamics. Some will test your growth, just to see if they can still touch the parts of you that used to bleed. But Scorpio, you've learned too much to fall back into what you've risen from. You may still feel temptation, still feel moments of softness toward the past, but you won't stay there. Not this time. Because you finally realize that healing doesn't mean you never get triggered. It means you choose what to do with the trigger. It means you pause instead of react. It means you protect your energy like it's sacred because it is. And maybe for the first time, you're not interested in going back to who you used to be. Even for a moment. That version of you had to break so this one could emerge. The shift is here. And it's not temporary. It's not a fleeting burst of motivation. It's an energetic relocation. You've moved. Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and now your external world is catching up to reflect it. So if things are falling away, let them. If people are confused, let them be. If opportunities close, trust that better ones are aligning. You're not losing your path, you're clearing it. You may not see all the rewards yet. That's okay. This is the part where the ground still feels shaky. But your soul is solid. This is the part where you're not who you were, but not quite yet who you're becoming. And even though it's uncertain, it's also holy. Because it means you've surrendered the illusion of control. You've opened yourself to being guided by something deeper than logic, your inner knowing, and from here on out, you no longer walk alone. Not because someone else is holding your hand, but because your higher self is finally leading the way, and they don't rush. They don't panic. They don't chase. They trust. And so will you. Scorpio, this shift is not the end of the storm. It's the quiet after. The breath before the bloom. The light breaking through the cracks of all that once hurt. And what's coming next is not a repeat of what you've known. It's the reward for everything you've endured. Scorpio, if the universe could sit beside you right now, it wouldn't tell you to rush. It wouldn't hand you a roadmap or a checklist or a 5-year plan. It would sit in the stillness with you. It would place a quiet hand over your heart and whisper not to your ears, but to the deepest part of your soul that you are not lost, that nothing real is ever truly taken, and that the pain you've walked through has not gone unnoticed. Because you weren't just surviving, you were transforming. This isn't the kind of transformation that earns applause. It's the kind that takes place in invisible spaces, in the nights where you cried quietly so no one would hear, in the mornings you got out of bed with a heavy heart but still chose to show up, in the moments you let go of something that almost felt like home, simply because it wasn't honoring your truth anymore. That kind of transformation is sacred. And now, the universe is reflecting it back to you. Through the peace that begins to settle in your body, through the clarity that silences your overthinking, through the way you speak more gently to yourself, through the way life, ever so subtly, starts bringing you people who feel like calm, not chaos. It's not random. It's resonance. You've realigned with your path, not because you figured everything out, but because you trusted something, even when there were no guarantees. Because you stopped waiting for others to validate your worth. Because you finally stopped betraying your intuition just to belong. Scorpio, your ability to rise in silence, to hold your own hand in the dark, to love deeply and still let go. That's what makes you powerful. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fix what was never broken. You don't need to chase what has already drifted away. You just need to keep listening to the part of you that always knew. Because that voice, it's never been wrong. And here's what it's saying now. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken. You are unfolding in divine time. You are protected, even when it feels like loss. You are seen, even when no one is watching. You are loved, especially when you forget how to love yourself. So if you needed a sign to keep going, this is it. If you needed permission to rest, you have it. If you needed reassurance that it's working, even if you can't see it yet, it is. And if you needed to hear one final truth before you walk forward into the new life awaiting you, it's this: you didn't lose anything meant for your future. You only lost what was blocking it. The door is open now. Scorpio. The path is clear, and the next version of you, she's already waiting on the other side. Trust her. Follow her. And don't look back.